Welcome, everyone. We're really enthused about having Jill Rickards with us today. Jill has been really actively involved in the Fort Collins community for over 30 years. She does work with a lot with small businesses, and as a part of that, she does consulting, accounting, and tax preparation. I've known Jill for quite a while through some many different connections. And Jill, we're really glad to have you here. We're doing all of these things as play shops, and how you make a play shop out of estate planning when most people procrastinate it. But I did see a cartoon today. The lawyer is looking at Frosty the Snowman, and he says, "Well, Frosty, it's March. Don't you think it's time we think about estate planning?" So I've got my tablet here. I'm going to take some notes and just lead us on.
All right. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you here today. The first thing I want to do is probably make a disclaimer. I'm a certified public accountant, not an attorney. So I don't practice law, but we are going to be talking about some basic financial planning ideas and why you may want to have an estate plan. Nonetheless, but if you have very specific questions and you want to move forward with like a will or something like that, that's something you'll have to contact an attorney for. Well, when you think about the normal estate planning, you think about getting all your assets together, getting a will, putting your, what do you want to do with all your assets or your investments when you die? But an estate plan is basically to provide peace of mind for you and to leave assets, of course, to your loved ones, but assuring that they get passed on the way that you would like to get them passed on. Now, there's all kinds of things that involve estate planning. And it's not just about the money. Estate planning is much more about dividing up your finances so that it allows you to ensure that you receive the proper medical care and that the people that you leave behind are prepared. So it's not always just about money. So there's things like medical directions, medical what do they call them? Or advanced directives is what they call it, about your medical, how you want to be treated at the end of life. And that's really important.
Is that
Also,
within the durable power of attorney? Is that the form?
no, there is a specific form, and it's called an advanced directive. You usually give it to your hospital or your physician, and sometimes you carry it with you because what if the accident happened or you died at some point? People need to know what to do with you. So, like do not resuscitate things, or who has the power to decide about your medical condition or your life. So you want to set that up, which is also part of estate planning.
Okay.
What I want to do is to tell you about a story that I got involved in estate planning, and then we can get to more specifics, but I thought it might be interesting. So I have two uncles in California that I did their tax returns for. They happened to be a gay couple, and they were married. And I do their tax returns. It's an uncle. I've been doing his tax returns for years and years and years. And I knew that he was declining in health a bit, but nothing to be worried about. He's in Palm Springs, California. So I get a call 4 years ago in May from a friend of theirs that said something like, I'm not doing this. I'm just not doing this. They told me to call you. So, oh, they did. And I had just finished a book by Michael Singer called have you read his,
Mhm,
Cheryl? But
mhm.
the Surrender Project. I had just finished it, and he surrendered to what was there. And so I said, well, this is what's here. I'll surrender to it. So I got on a plane, went to California, and found their finances in disarray. They hadn't paid any bills since December. My uncle had dementia, and his partner also had like alcohol induced dementia. So they both were not functioning very well. So that's the important thing of keeping a will up. So I get there and I start looking at the will, and the will has an executor that they don't even speak to anymore.
Oh, wow.
They do not want that person managing. They're not even friends anymore. It was a neighbor at one time. And then the second one, administrator was set up, who lives in Arkansas. It was a niece of one of my uncles, and she couldn't really serve. She's all the way in Arkansas. So the first thing that I did is I called their attorney up, and the attorney said, well, are they both in sound mind? Well, I think I just caught it in time to be considered in sound mind. If I'd have waited a few months later, maybe the attorney said you wouldn't be in sound mind. So that's one thing you have to be, is in sound mind to exercise all these documents. So then I got everything together. I had changed everything to include me because I was really willing to serve. So I spent 4 years in service of my two uncles in their estate. But because they had me, and because I was able to act quickly and getting the proper paperwork set up, that everything has turned out just fine. So now I'm sitting ready to distribute their assets, but it's
Uh-huh.
all organized.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're talking about seniors, but I have run into so many stories where someone passes and they're only in their 30s or 40s or 50s. Don't wait until you get to the point where you think you might need a will, because maybe you actually needed that will yesterday, um, as you are going through your life. So that's one thing. And what about including your family in the planning so they know what's going on? In days of old, it was like, oh, what's he going to have or she going to have in her will or whatever. My feeling is, in today's world, that the family would do well, and you might be even able to have some fun thinking about it. What is that, a good idea?
Oh, I think it's an excellent idea. And I have the best story for you. It's with my father-in-law. And he and I worked together for 10 years, putting together a what, where, and when book.
Oh.
And the first thing that has to happen, I think a lot of people hold their finances really close to their chest, and
Mhm.
they don't want their family to know what they're getting or how much money they have. So oftentimes many people aren't prepared for that. But that's basically a pretty big disservice. So if you don't want to let all your kids know about what you have, at least let them know, especially if you want them to be an executor, those ones, the children that can be responsible about the information that they receive. But
Mhm.
this my father-in-law, he put down everything. He put down all his household things, where who do you call? He made a list of all of his investments and he kept it in that book. He had his will in the book. They also set up a trust because they lived in Florida. And there's some states that get pretty expensive if you have assets to probate. So a lot of people living in states, because of that probate process, will have trusts.
Mhm.
Colorado, now again, I'm not an attorney, but from what I understand, Colorado has a very simple probate process, but you still have to go to probate, which means you have to go to court, and the court administers that this person, has a personal representative elected, and then you have to report, and the court administrates the asset distribution. So it can be an expensive process and carried out too, just as a side note. But this What, When, and Where book was just fantastic. He had his how he wanted to be buried or cremated in there. They happened to want, and what they want to do with the ashes. They
Mhm.
wanted to say, what is the eulogy that I want? He
Mhm.
put down what to put. He didn't want a, a funeral per se, but he wanted it to be put in the newspapers that he had passed and have a party
Mhm. Yeah.
instead. But you see, if no one really knew that he really wanted to have his friends get together for a party to celebrate his memorial, we probably would have just cremated him. And then he said this is a little illegal, but he wanted his ashes thrown into the brook or the pond or the stream next to his house in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
it can get kind of complicated. But what was so great about that is they had 3 sons, one of which is my husband. And my husband and I were executors of his estate because I was the one that had the knowledge, but then my husband was the relative. So we
Mhm.
administer his estate jointly. But he got 3 books together for the 3 sons, and he told them ahead of time what they were going to inherit. So everybody knew what was supposed to happen. He had 3 houses. One house goes to one of each of the boys. What to do with his artwork, what to do with this or that. When he had one asset that wasn't put in his probate, and that was a car, but it didn't work very well. So we just donated the car. So there was no probate. That if there's no probate, it gives the ability for the person that you have named as your personal representative to administer your estate. So we collected the money, we paid out, and then when we got everything together, we wrote checks, my husband and I, to the 3 boys to administer their estate. But there was no arguments whatsoever. The only argument I had was with my husband, who said, well, I think we should give more charitable deduction or charitable bequests to these people over here. And you know what the answer was? I don't think so,
Okay.
because you have a fiduciary responsibility when you take on the administration of an estate.
Uh-huh.
So that's another lesson. Somebody that will follow the rules, follow what your intentions were. Now, it wasn't a big argument. He just knows that I follow the rules. So
Mhm.
no, it's going to be distributed exactly the way your parents set it up, and no other way. And that's the way I'm being right now with my uncle's estate. He had one beneficiary that for 4 years has been asking me to send him a little money since they're an ultimate beneficiary. Well,
Mhm.
no distributions will be made until someone dies,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know?
My mother had everything laid out on a spreadsheet and so on. I don't know why people hesitate because obviously none of us are going to get out of here alive. And so we might as well do it the way we want. Husband's ex-wife died. He just was saying that he would just leave everything to the children. And then he saw the way she had or hadn't arranged things, what happened with the relationships with the children. And so you really save an awful lot of heartache and disappointment and so on by, I think, bringing the family in.
Oh, that's such a great point. And if you if you can kind of settle all those things before you die. Now, here's the thing. When you said, I don't understand why people just don't do what they're supposed to do, right?
Yeah,
That's a really funny thing because, estate planning is something we won't want to do because then we have to face our own mortality a lot of times. But you do your estate planning for who you leave behind. Now, if you thought that your family would fight over your estate and actually end up not talking to each other, which I've been part of a lot of the states where some of the
mhm,
children even sue each other,
yes,
that's been part of my world as well. So if you can work all of those out and face it beforehand and not just be thinking about, oh, I don't wanna, because that's really, there's a lot of people that don't let, I know a lot of people that says, I'm not interested in that, let the kids fight over it.
yeah,
But is that really what you want? Do you really
uh-huh,
want your children to fight? And it gives you such peace of mind to know that your assets are going to go where they're going to go and where you want them to go, and that you
mhm,
get what you want in terms of taking care of things that don't have to do about money. It has to do,
absolutely,
I mean,
yeah.
it's and the other thing is, yeah, young people die, and so you need to, I mean, it's a good message for every person. Young people do die, and just be prepared for everything that you need to do and handle with a good attitude, I think.
The attitude, it's kind of like, well, let's have fun. I had a mother-in-law that put names on furniture and paintings and everything so that when the children went in, they were just able to pick it up. And I guess we're kind of at the end of our time, Jill, and want to thank you so much because I think it will be really beneficial. Any parting words?
If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer the question. And people are a little bit intimidated by the whole process.
Yes.
So the first thing you could do is to start your education. And you don't necessarily have to just go to an attorney and think about all the money that you have to spend. Wills are actually valid if they're typed, uh, and that so that you have them. So you can do a lot of this stuff without, especially if you don't have a large estate, you can
Mhm.
do a lot of this by yourself. You can get forms on the internet and then kind of get yourself used to dealing in that arena. And then the parting comment, if you have your act together and you go to an attorney, it's going to be much better for them and much better for you because they won't have to charge you a lot and they won't be counseling you in the meeting about what you should consider. I think that's the parting thing. Do your homework, have a good attitude about it, and always keep in mind it's not about you.
Right. Okay, Jill, thank you so very much.